Hello and welcome to EBA Day TV. I'm Debbie Bell and I'm seated here with Gilbert Lichter, the CEO of EBA Clearing. And we've been discussing this morning with regards to the Sepa deadline in 2014, that it's time that is of the essence. And that's really what you've been saying, haven't you?
Yes.
What's your approach in terms of this approaching deadline?
Yes, I mean the Sepa end date now is known. It is in less than 20 months from now. This is for the level of transformation that banks have to do within their systems. A very tight deadline, And one can only hope that no bank is taken by surprise by this deadline. But then it's not only the banks that have to think of this deadline, it's also the corporate customers who will have to use the new Sepa instruments, the technology that comes with it, to communicate with the bank, to send files, to receive files. And again, for corporates, this is a very tight deadline. Countries may give a 2-year extension for corporates to prepare, but then since the deadline is known, since the migration to Sepa is certain now, the question is, why would you wait for long now as a corporate to get yourself ready and to take the benefits out of Sepa?
And also from a banking point of view, you were saying that they could be receiving large amounts of volumes by 2013.
Yes, that is a very important aspect. The deadline being February 2014, I think nobody can really believe that it will take until January 2014 until the corporates, other customers will migrate to Sepa. For those corporates, also very much public administrations that have been preparing themselves for Sepa, they might well start using the Sepa instruments earlier.
So you could have a scenario where the corporates are ready, but maybe some banks aren't.
That's exactly where we tried to, around the table of those banks that plan to use Step 2 for their future domestic Sepa volumes, where we try to sensitize the banks that while banks on the receiver side, essentially on the receiver side of payments, might think, because of their customer base, they have time until late 2013, other banks who are more on the corporate side, who are more on the, so to say, on the sending side of payments, might see volumes picking up rather earlier. But then, as a bank essentially on the receiving side, vis-à-vis the customers, these banks will receive already potentially big volumes from those banks that are more on the corporate side. And so the forecasting on the migration speed and the migration volumes throughout 2013 is an important thing to be done now. What we again tried to do is to put around the table those banks that are planning to use the Step 2 platform and to have a dialogue in which banks, from their sending approach, from their receiving approach, try to estimate what will be the curve, the tide, you could say, of the Sepa migration. And being ready for Sepa now as a bank, in between the customers and being ready means most likely that your systems must be able to cope, certainly on peak days, with very important volumes already as of mid-2013, which, coming back to your question, is the real issue here. Time is of the essence. And the time to where banks must be ready for Sepa volumes is shorter than between now and 2014.
And it could be shorter than they're preparing for. And
that is, of course, an issue of deserves great attention, indeed.
So as EBA Clearing, you were saying your role is twofold,
Yes.
really, in your approach to
Right.
getting people ready.
Right. In the first approach on the matter of preparing for the Sepa end date, we organized this dialogue amongst
Yes.
the banks, which I believe also those banks involved found very helpful and served them to have their internal decision-making process. But then also for what EBA Clearing is offering in this picture, the central processing platform, we have undertaken an important program to produce, to make available the sufficient scale for Sepa volumes of a domestic size, of a domestic magnitude. And in this sense, again, as of mid-2013. That is something which the EBA Clearing Company has taken on itself. That is where the clearing company does its commitment to provide the banks that will use the Step 2 platform with the service levels that are required for Sepa domestic processing.
So really, in essence, what you're urging is that people get ready sooner. Don't make it a
Yes.
last-minute ditch to be ready.
Exactly.
Because
Exactly.
it could affect your own business if you're not ready in time.
Exactly.
And your systems, you're explaining, because
Yes.
it could be detrimental to
Yes.
your own systems.
Yes, that's exactly. And I think banks know what they have to do. And the Sepa instruments are largely known by now. They are defined. The technical features of them is defined. I think also that banks know what they have to do internally.
And with technology as well, they should know
The
that.
technology changes, and which are significant as well. I think by now everybody knows these issues. What now matters is that the period between basically now and February 2014 is understood as a period where you have to be prepared rather earlier than waiting, as you said, for a last-minute readiness, which could be very detrimental, certainly for also the banks who has customers that are waiting for payments, and these payments cannot be processed.
So on that note, you'll be able to say the message is 1st of February 2014. It's not really your deadline. Make a personal deadline or a business deadline
Sure.
of somewhere in 2013.
Yes.
And I'd like to say thank you very much for joining us at EBA Day TV.
Thank you very much.